because today we are deep into a series called Good Directions. Good Directions. Now I'm going to ask this question again, all right? If you were here last week, did anybody go home and listen to that country music song called Good Directions? Anybody? No, still? Maybe. We're just going to keep doing the series until people start listening to that song. I'm just kidding. It actually has nothing to do with what we're talking about. We're talking about good directions like in life, like the directions that your life is going in, right? And here's the question, and I want to bring us back to this question. If this is like your third or fourth week with us in this series, you've been asking this question hopefully, but it's one of those questions that you can just keep asking over and over and over again. The question is, where do you want to be in 5 years? Or if 5 years is too far for you, where do you want to be in a year? I'm not talking about location. What state do you want to live in? Or what school are you going to go to? Or what's your job going to be? But what kind of person do you want to be? If we talk about things like self-control and you're here, do you want to be here in 6 months, in a year? If we talk about patience, if we talk about joy, or the quality of our relationships, what your marriage looks like, what your relationships look like with your kids, where do you want to be in 5 years, in 3 years, in 1 year, in 6 months? Do you have a picture, like a vision that you can see of that destination? That's really where we need to start. But then from there, the question we've asked is, well, how do we get there? And if you are with us, you know, we've said often we live as if desire is enough to get you there. Well, yeah, I want to be more patient. Hopefully I'll end up there, right? I want to be more kind to the people around me. Hopefully that desire will just eventually lead me there. But really what we said is, just like in life on a journey or on a walk, the thing that gets you to where you want to be is not your desire, but your direction. We're looking at life like it's a path. And there's a destination. There's a picture, an image of where you want to be. It's not desire that will get you there, but your direction. Your direction. And your direction is made up of your decisions. Decisions. And these are the types of questions really we can never stop asking. You know, just this week, right? We're in the middle of this series. Just this week, I took a long walk in the village and just stopped to think like, okay, where do I want to be in a few years? What about this church? And the way that I'm spending my time now on a daily basis, the small decisions, the little habits that I have, the things I do and the things I don't do, is that actually leading me in that direction? Because it's not enough to just want to be somewhere. We have to actually stop and connect the dots. So we talked about the ability to make good decisions, or what we called wisdom. And really this whole series is about wisdom, which very simply put is the ability to make good decisions. Or if you want a more fancy definition, wisdom is competence with regard to the realities and complexities of life. The ability to navigate things that aren't so clear. It includes right and wrong, but it is so far beyond right and wrong. And so how do we become the type of people that make good decisions? Whether you're a person of faith or not, are we making decisions that lead us to where we want to go or where we think we should end up, depending on what you believe? And so we started out very simply, and this is so simple, it's easy to just look over, but we talked about giving thought to your ways, simply thinking about your ways, the way that you're living. It's so easy, especially today with how busy the world is, how busy life is, just keep going, not stop and think. And then from there, we said, okay, if we stop and just think about our ways, what if we followed his ways? We're talking about God here. And the idea, especially if you're not a person of faith, is, well, what if there really is a God who genuinely cares about me, really wants me to flourish, isn't trying to hold me back, And he's laid out some easy ones for us. Like there are some things we don't really need wisdom to decide on or about. He's laid it out pretty clearly. And what if simply listening to what he says is the wise thing to do? Not just the right thing, but the best thing to do. And so we tried to consider that for a little bit. And really this question from there is like, well then, what each one of us needs to figure out is in our story, in my story, in your story, does God feel more like a threat or is he the hero? When you think about God, has he come to save you or has he come to hold you back? Is he a threat to your joy, a threat to your fun, a threat to your thriving? Or has he come to give you life to the full, like Jesus said? Then the following week we talked about pride, which is not just like simply being arrogant. We called it ruthless, sleepless, unsmiling concentration on the self. Actually, I didn't make that up, stole that from C.S. Lewis. It's like everything in life is about me, who I am and what I'm worth. And the reason that messes up wisdom, like the ability to make good decisions, is that the destination is no longer the destination. Like it redefines where we're going. It's now no longer I want to go there because I want to be that. It's I want to do this because of what that will say about who I am and what I'm worth. I don't want the job because that's what I feel like I've been made for. I want the job because of how it will make me look. And so pride hijacks our ability to make good decisions. From there, we said the solution is humility. You've probably heard this before. But humility is not like just thinking lowly of yourself. It's not just thinking less of yourself. It's thinking of yourself less. You are not the end of every decision. If you meet someone humble, you don't think like, wow, they think so little of themselves. You think, wow, they are so interested in me because it wasn't all about them. Then finally, last week, I challenged you to think about your habits. If we're talking about giving thought to your ways, there's a way you do everything. There's a way you act when you're angry. There's a way you act when you're tired. There's a way you handle conflict. There's a way you are when you're happy. There's a way you are when you are around certain people. And a lot of times we just accept those ways as if they're okay. And so I challenge you to find someone you love and trust who's not just going to tear you apart because they like to, and ask them, for real, is there a way that seems right to me, that feels fine, but isn't? Is causing damage to me or maybe the people around me, and we've just accepted it because it doesn't bother me anymore, so you just live with it. And if we look at all these things together, it's like one big recipe that will help us become the type of people who tend to make good decisions, who tend to be competent with regard to the realities and the complexities of life. If we're giving thought to our ways, we're aware of what can hijack us. And so today, I want to talk about something that we've touched on before, but we can't afford to not talk about in this series when it comes to making good decisions. So I got a question, all right? Anybody here like to travel? All right, good. Like to travel. I'm like, with the traveling. You know, I'm kind of a homebody. My day off, I like to stay home, relax, comfortable in my own home. My wife, not so much. She likes to see the world. So when we can, we go, and she enjoys it, and I go. So before, my biggest issue with traveling was actually like the traveling part, like the transportation. That used to be the thing I disliked the most, but it has since changed. Now, the thing I dislike the most about traveling is actually packing. Because I have two problems, all right? I tend to pack things I don't need. I also tend to forget the things that I do need, you know? And so I'll be looking at my shoes. I'll be like, well, should I bring the basketball shoes that I only wear on indoor courts? Because what if there's a court, you know? Should I bring my outdoor basketball shoes? And then I'll just bring them both, you know? Or I'll look at some of my books. And I don't know about you, but when I'm going away, I get real ambitious about reading. Like, I'm gonna read a lot of books, you know? And so, is it gonna be like leisurely reading though, or like, you know, growth reading? And so I'll just bring, you know, 4 or 5 books with me, and then I'll read none of them. Because when we go to the beach, you know, my kids wanna go in the water, play in the sand, or dig a hole, or whatever. So I read none of them. But I'll pack things I don't need, and then I'll forget often. Like, I just forget things that I need. And I don't forget like 1 or 2 things, I forget categories. So I've gone on trips where I've forgotten socks, just all socks, or shorts, just didn't bring shorts, no shorts, because I just forgot, like, that I'm a person that wears socks or shorts. So what I do now is, rather than asking for help, or making a list, I just stop and look at my suitcase and I'm like, okay, what is something I can't afford to not bring? Like, what is irreplaceable if I don't bring it? Like, if we're going on a flight, okay, I have to bring the tickets, right? Or if we're going to a concert, or like, there are certain things, okay, if I don't bring this one thing, it ruins the whole thing, right? There's certain things, and for me, that's kind of worked, because you get someplace, you realize you forgot socks, you could buy socks. But if you needed the tickets or the thing you went to the thing for, and you don't have the thing, well, then you're in trouble, okay? If we're looking at life like a journey, like it's a trip, and we're navigating directions with decisions, this is the thing you can't afford to not give attention to on the journey. It is too important to not think about. We can't afford to not think about it. And often we do. It is so easy. If it's hard for us to think about the way we're doing things, it's even harder to think about this unless we're super, super intentional about it. Some of you have been dealing with things in your lives, in your relationships, in the lives of people that are close to you, and it really comes back to not paying attention to this one thing. This one thing is the most valuable tool you have for the journey. The most valuable. We're talking about the heart. The heart. Now, I don't know about you, all right, but when I hear the heart, I think, like, to me, it's in the same category as the belly, you know? It's like a childish way to summarize things that a child can't explain, like the digestive system, you know? And so my son just comes out 96,000 times in the middle of the night, and it's like, oh, my belly hurts, okay. Because he can't articulate, he's got whatever, indigestion or whatever. And so I think, okay, well, the heart is kind of like that too. But it's not. It's not. Jesus and the people who study stuff like this would say you don't outgrow the concept of the heart. You don't outgrow talking about the importance of the heart. It's the most valuable tool for us on the journey. So maybe you think about the heart and you think like love, right? Brokenhearted, love you with all my heart. And that's true. That's part of it. Or maybe you think about the heart and you think a little broader, like emotions, you know? Like you can have some sadness in your heart. Heart's mostly emotional, and the heart is emotional. That's definitely true. Or maybe when you think about the heart, you immediately think like more spiritual or religious. Like one time I was talking to my kids and I felt like I was being cornered. They were like, hey, where's Jesus? And I honestly don't remember if this was my son or my daughter. But they were like, where's Jesus? And I was like right now? He's in heaven. And they're like, thought he was in my heart. I'm like, all right, whatever. Maybe you think about Jesus being in your heart, like the heart's mostly spiritual thing. And sure, there's like truth to that as well. But if you step back and look at the heart is much bigger, much more important than we often treat it. The heart, from a biblical standpoint, from the way the writers in the Bible talk about it, the heart is where we keep the things that we feel, the things that we think, the things that we know, and the things that we believe. It's the inner person. And what's amazing is that for thousands of years in civilizations all across the world, people have been talking about this inner being, this idea of the heart, like the you inside of you, where you keep your feelings, your thinkings, the facts you know, and the things that you believe. And it's something we cannot neglect. Now, okay, let's go back to our little navigation journey illustration, all right? Remember I said the heart was the most important tool to take with you on the journey? For those of you who are metaphorical and poetic, what tool do you think it would be? Like, think about it. You don't have to call it out, but think. Like, what tool? What tool? Think about the way we talk about the heart when we're talking about making decisions or navigating, right? Anyone know what this is? Close, not a pocket watch. It's a compass. Compass. Now, I don't really know how to use a compass. I know it points north, but it's pretty good for navigating, right? Or at least it was at one point before we had GPS systems and stuff like that. And maybe you've heard that you should follow your heart. Right? You ever heard that? The idea of following your heart? Listen to your heart. In fact, on the back of this compass, it says, keep this close and listen to your heart. Then you will never lose your way. Follow your heart. If you've ever seen The Sandlot, anyone ever see that movie? Baseball movie, like little kids? Yeah, there's this scene at the end where Benny the Jet Rodriguez has this conversation with Babe Ruth, the ghost of Babe Ruth, and he's like, heroes get remembered, but legends never die. He says, follow your heart, kid, and you'll never go wrong. It's a really moving scene. And maybe you've heard that before. Maybe you've seen relationships where they're like working out, they're amazing, and it's like, how do you know? How do you know they were the one? And you've heard like, I just saw them, or like pretty quickly I got to know them, and it was like, boom, I just knew in my heart, I just followed my heart, they were the one for me. I had to choose between this person, that person, I followed my heart, they were the one for me. That's why things are going so well. Or maybe you listen to like role models on TV, maybe professional athletes or public figures that you've looked up to that have made hard decisions or made a lot of progress, or someone you want to model your life after, and it's like, how'd you get to where you are? And they're like, I just followed my heart. And they got to where they are, and look at them now, and they're following their hearts. Or maybe you've been in this situation, and you've had to make a tough choice. And you really had to think hard, like, do I go this way or do I go that way? Do I do this or I do that? And you stopped and you thought, and you listened to your heart, and you followed it, and it led you to where you wanted to be. And maybe it worked. But if we think about the heart as the place where we keep what we feel, what we know, what we believe, what we think, what if those things aren't quite right? What if we don't believe the right thing? You know, Adolf Hitler believed in a superior form of the human race. And when he was making the choices he was making, he was following his heart. He was acting on what he believed. It caused a world of hurt. The terrorist attacks on September 11th, those planes were flown by people who believed they were serving God. They were following their hearts. Maybe you've seen people commit crimes, right? In a fury of anger, a feeling, or getting revenge. And they're just following their hearts. They're following what they believe. They believe that person should be punished for what they did, and so they acted on it. And it caused a world of hurt. Or maybe you. Maybe you had to make a choice between somebody, between two people in a relationship. And you listened to your heart. Maybe you did it against the advice of other people, but your heart was telling you this person was right. And maybe that relationship turned into something really painful. Maybe it didn't work out. Maybe it was abusive. And so why does it work for some people and work for others, not work for others? Jeremiah was an ancient prophet, somebody that people went to for wisdom. And he knew these two kings, and he knew the messes both of them made. Their story is a story in itself, but in just looking at this situation, he kind of reflects, and he writes, the heart is deceitful above all things It's deceitful. It's beyond cure. And so I would suggest to you that you shouldn't follow your heart. Don't follow your heart. Because it could lead you to some pretty bad places. So then what do? We don't need that anyway. What do you do? Right? If the heart is not a compass, then what is it? What is it? Well, Solomon writes in the book of Proverbs, which is the book we've been looking at throughout this series. He says, above all else, guard your heart. Ready? For everything you do flows from it. And if the heart is the place where you keep what you know, what you think, what you feel, what you believe, you know this. You know that. You do things from the things you know, feel, think, and believe. It is a terrible, terrible compass. But it is a good engine, right? It's a source of life. It's fuel for living. Jesus said that when you see good, it came from the good in the heart. When you see bad, it came from the bad in the heart. In other words, it's not a good or a bad thing, it's just a thing. It's like an engine. And so when we're talking about the idea of following your heart is not a good idea. Your heart doesn't need to be followed, your heart needs to be led. Led, which is why Solomon says in that verse I just had up there, it's why he says, above all else, guard your heart. Guard it. That's the same word we used last week if you were with us when we talked about guarding your ways. It's the word used for like how a shepherd takes care of his sheep. A shepherd knew his sheep. He knew them by name. He knew their tendencies. He knew their strengths. He knew their weaknesses. He knew all their issues. And Solomon's saying here, like, is be aware of what's in the heart, of the beliefs that you have, of the way that you feel, of the things that you know. Like, be aware of that because that's going to influence the things that you do. Give it time, give it attention. Be aware of it. When I was younger, I was in, junior high, high school maybe. My friend had a go-kart and he always wanted to drive it and never let me drive it. And so one day he comes up with this game. He's like, how about this? I'll let you drive it, but you gotta let me chase you and throw stuff at you. And I was like, deal. No brainer. So we played this game out on a field and I was in the go-kart, was like thrilled, finally there, and he just comes like running after me. And I really underestimated the acceleration of this go-kart and I couldn't get away from him. And so I'm flooring it. He takes this branch and just flings it at me. Yeah, what a friend. And I dodge the branch, but my body was like hanging out of the cart. And my feet were wedged under this bar. So the cart's going, and I'm just flopping out of the cart. And he's watching from a distance, laughing. And I was terrified because I didn't have the core strength I needed to pull myself back up. And I was just like, where is this thing gonna go, right? When you hear follow your heart, that's what I want you to think about. Where is it gonna go? It really could go anywhere depending on what's going on in the heart. Maybe I'm gonna pull safely into a garage somewhere, just real nice, maybe. Or maybe I'm gonna hit a tree or end up in a ditch, right? Because the heart is an engine and it needs to be led. It needs to be led. And so this is what Solomon means when he says, guard your heart. Be aware of what's going on within it. You know, sometimes like here at the church, every once in a while something will happen. We'll have to make a difficult decision. And sometimes, very rarely, but sometimes people do things that are kind of tough to swallow. You know, they're a little like personally hurtful. And oftentimes, a number of us at different points have said, you know what? Can we like pause this decision here because there's some hurt and I wanna make sure we don't make a decision that's coming from that. Because I'm personally offended and I wanna make sure that doesn't cloud, my heart's condition doesn't cloud my ability to make this decision. There are often times where I'm hurt or offended or someone bothered me or something happens, and in that moment, if you were to tell me, listen to your heart, what I would tell you is like, you don't want me to right now. Because it's not going to lead me in a good place. And so sometimes even just being aware of it without even changing what's going on in there and just knowing I'm not in a condition to take the wheel right now can be extremely helpful. So my question for you is, how well do you know what's going on in your heart? Do you lead it? Or do you let it lead you? If your heart is a place where you feel and desire and believe and think and know and all that, there are times where, of course, you act on what you feel. Of course. You act on what you believe. Of course. As long as you're aware of what's going on in there. Is this a belief that's good, that I'm proud of, that I would affirm if I saw in someone else? Or is it one that I wouldn't want to admit? Well, maybe I shouldn't take the wheel. Is it a feeling that's good, that's right, that's pure? Should I act on it? Or is it one I wouldn't want to admit? Maybe I shouldn't take the wheel. And just being aware of that can totally influence your decisions one way or another. So here are some questions I'll leave you with. Some questions. I want you to think about these. Maybe close your eyes if you want to. You don't have to. But just take a minute to kind of like be still and do some heart work. Is there anybody in your life right now that you're angry with? You feel like they owe you something? Maybe it's an apology. Maybe they took something from you. Is it possible that anger has taken the wheel in that relationship? Maybe some other relationships as well. Maybe it's leaked over into some other relationships. Is there anyone in your life that's hurt you? Is it possible that that unresolved hurt has taken the wheel? Has clouded your ability to make decisions? Is causing you to do things you wouldn't advise that other people do? Do you have secrets that you're harboring within the heart? Maybe secrets that are making you feel guilty? Things you're ashamed of? And that guilt, that shame, is causing you to make decisions, is corrupting your ability to see things clearly? Maybe sharing it with a friend, someone you trust, would disarm that guilt and free your heart. Has someone offended you in a way that you are obsessing over? Like you can't get it off your mind? Is it clouding your ability to make decisions? Is there someone in your life whose failure you'd be tempted to celebrate? Maybe there's some envy, some jealousy that's gotten into the heart and has begun to mess with your ability to make good choices. Choices you'll be glad you made, that will lead you to where you want to go. I'm gonna ask the band to come back up here, but here's the picture I'll leave you with. When I was in college, I remember one day I was driving back to my place, and I'm on this long road in Virginia, and it's a highway. There's this car a ways up, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, there's this like dark black smoke coming out from underneath the car. And I get closer to the car, and I see underneath the car, there are flames. Like the car is on fire. And it's underneath, and the smoke's going that way, and so the driver is still driving forward. And I pull up next to this car, and I look, and there's a girl who is, at best, moderately concerned. You know, she's like, just kind of looking around, but still going. And I'm thinking, in the video games I play, you got 5 seconds after the car goes on fire before it blows up. Which is not true, you have more time than that. But I pull up next to this girl, and I'm like, I don't know the symbol for fire under your car, but I'm just like yelling like, pull over, or this thing's gonna blow. Your engine is on fire. I wonder if you're honest with yourself, like maybe there are some fires within you, in your heart, that are clouding your ability to make choices, but are subtly seeping into other relationships. And maybe, if you're honest, maybe at best you're moderately concerned. My challenge for you this morning would be to take some time to stop, to pull over, to look at what's going on under the hood. You'll be glad you did.